Well, hello, fellow residents of the town of Wells. I'm Mike Livingston, the town engineer and planner, and this is our annual video we do for informational purposes for the upcoming town warrant that'll be occurring on July 14th. We'd like to start off. The purpose of this meeting, of course, is to provide the public with background information on the articles they'll be voting on at the town meeting. And we try to cover most of the articles in this informational session, but we do try to keep it brief to keep your attention, get the information across to everyone as much as possible. So the first item on the agenda is the budget, which is a critical item in that you'll all be voting on. And I'll turn it over to John and Jody.
Thank you, Mike. I'm John Carter, town manager, and in a few days, you'll be receiving the town meeting book. It looks like this in the mail. We are, with the Board of Selectmen, having 3 informal hearings on the budget and the warrant articles associated with that. It is a process that we undergo from early fall through March, and I'm going to turn it over to Jody, our finance director, to kind of describe the process.
So back in December, department heads produced their budget. The town manager and I took all that information that was submitted by department heads, compiled it into a budget that we then presented to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen, once they accept that budget, turn it over to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee started meetings in the first week of January, and we just finished with the Budget Committee just recently. But part of the task of the Budget Committee is to make sure that we present back to the Selectmen and to the voters a budget that is under LD1, which is the tax cap that we have to follow, and the budget that we have proposed is meeting that goal. We are under the tax cap by almost $175,000.
This is all processed through our town charter and is regulated by that. Our budget process has produced a budget for FY21, which starts July 1st. And the budget is divided in the book, so you can see revenues, salaries, operations, capital improvements, and the standard warrant articles that are passed through and are part of the capital improvement program. On salaries, we are up 2 to 4%. We are in negotiations with 4 labor groups, and we have finalized 1 contract, and we have 3 other contracts as of today, June 1st, to resolve. We are making good progress there. The gross operating budget is up. That is because of our debt financing and benefits and other insurances. We have warrant articles that are up for the purpose of buying conservation lands, which we'll be getting into in a minute. And our capital improvement plan is down by almost 22%. Revenues are a little bit off this year, but they are still very healthy. Even in the COVID-19 era, we believe we're closing FY20 in the black. As we speak, June 1st, it looks that way. In FY21, July 1st, we will be watching the first quarter as well as the second quarter and putting some funds aside, just making sure in that situation that revenues are coming in and that we won't be making those expenditures until we see the revenue picture and how healthy we are as a community. So our budget is locked in place. We are looking at a July 14th special town meeting, in the sense that it was moved from June 9th by the governor to July 14th because of the COVID-19. And it will be at the junior high. We urge people to do absentee voting request absentee ballots. And you can do that from our website under the town clerk page, or by calling the town clerk, or contacting the Secretary of State for an absentee ballot. So Jody, what other important data points that you see with the budget?
So in our proposed budget, taxpayers will see that we're looking at a school tax increase of approximately 1.28%. The tax rate that we're presenting in the budget is based on a 1% increase in valuation. We won't know what our valuation is until the assessor's through with her spring pickup, which will happen later this summer. But currently, if we only pick up the 1% in tax valuation, we're looking at a tax rate of $3.56 on the municipal side, which would be up 29 cents from last year. And then we want to note that our budget does include some key things. In the CIP project, there's some equipment that we need to purchase. And then we also have a bond that's on this year's warrant article that we'll be asking you to vote to allow us to go to bond. So that is one of the biggest items on the budget.
And we'll be talking about that in a moment.
Great. And for the voters, all the budgetary articles are Articles 3 through 13. That'll be on the town warrant and the ballot. Articles 14, 15, and 16 are regarding the conservation land acquisitions that John had referenced earlier. And we have Keith Fletcher from the Conservation Commission that's available here at the meeting as well to discuss those items. All three involve the land acquisitions of conservation lands. So Keith, can you describe each of those to us?
I sure will. Thank you very much. So Articles 14, 15, and 16 come from the Conservation Commission and carry on a tradition in the town of Wells of purchasing some land and setting it aside for conservation, both for wildlife and for people to enjoy, to protect water quality and kind of keep some of the rural character here in Maine, the beautiful town we are in. So Article 14 is conservation land purchase. This piece of land is between Meeting House Road and Route 109. Although the warrant article says 60 acres, we've had some survey work done. We believe it to be 74 acres. This tract of land will be accessed, not now, but in the future by the public from the Eastern Trail, which we expect to come through in about, 5 to 10 years through that area. So right now it's off a private road. We're not encouraging people to go down a private road, but it is an important conservation piece. And to help the town afford this parcel of land, we were successful in obtaining two large sums of money. One was a $120,000 grant from the Maine Natural Resources Conservation Program, and the other was a $70,000 bargain sale by the landowner, who in that way gave the first gift. So this is beautiful land. It's wooded wetlands, lovely for wildlife. It's very important as a stopping point for especially large animals moving between conservation areas to the south and west up to Kennebec Plains and back. We know black bear move through here, moose, all sorts of critters use this land. So the town, we're requesting $120,000 from the land bank, which is a capital improvement fund for this purpose, which would add on to the $190,000 in other funds that were raised and result in acquisition of this parcel of land for conservation. The next one, Article 15, is an important addition to the Fenderson Wildlife Commons, which is a large wetland that is mostly in town ownership now. It protects water quality in the Maryland River and Eaton Brook, and helps protect water quality in wells and so forth, and is also favored by hunters. And this would improve access to that backland there off of Bald Hill Road, and would also protect stream frontage along Eaton Brook. It's a very beautiful piece of land, and we'll be getting that at a very good price. And for that, we are requesting $144,000 from the land bank, that capital improvement fund I mentioned earlier, to acquire that. And that would, again, improve access. And it's also just great habitat, beautiful, beautiful land in there. And last is Article 16, which is been planned for a while. This is a 6-acre addition to the Getchell Wildlife Commons that the town purchased several years ago. A really interesting piece of land that it is, over 130 acres. It has very diverse habitat, meadows, scrubs, shrub wetlands, scrubby lands, old farm foundations, things like that. Interesting piece of land. But what this would do is really improve access to that land, which is, the current access is on a road, but it's very wet. So this is nice high dry access. This 6 acres is also used currently by folks who train bird dogs. There's a nice course set up for training bird dogs for hunting and for pheasants. So this as part of that, we'll be working with the Bragdon Estate also to give them a right-of-way over a strip of town land that will improve their ability to manage their land off Route 9. And so you'll see that in the second part of the article's description. But so we hope with this 6 acres, besides the fact that it's a lovely field, nice in its own right, it's great legal access to Getchell pasture and enable people to cross over into that wildlife commons. And for that, we're asking $82,000, although we think we can bring it in a little less than that because the survey costs will not be as high as we first thought. They're all great projects. I hope you support them. They all got unanimous votes in favor from both the Select Board and the Budget Committee. Please support the work of the Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Keith. And if people want to know where the exact location of those properties are, in the appendix of the booklet you'll get in the mail, Appendix 1, 2, and 3 show the locations of each of those parcels.
Thank you, Mike.
The next article to be discussed is Article 17, which is the road bond issue and seawall bond issue. And I'll turn over that discussion to Carol Murray.
Thanks, Mike. It's actually 3 components. There's roads, there's seawalls, and also a bridge. All of these items are critical pieces of infrastructure that need some attention. I'll tackle the roads first, and then Jim Hall from Dubois and King is also here, and we'll talk more about the bridges and seawalls with Jim. He's a structural engineer, but he does speak English, not just engineering. So I think you'll find he's informative. Swamp John Road, as you're all aware, has been in a bad state of disrepair, maybe never a good state of repair. And quite frankly, the only way to fix it is to go back down to the bottom of the road and rebuild it from ground level back up. And unless you get water out from underneath the pavement and get good material under the pavement, you'll never keep a road. So that's why this project seems very expensive. It is, but it's a one-time fix, and then you have a road that's going to be there for 7 to probably 11 years with nothing being done, and then only minor crack filling and that sort of maintenance. $1 million seems like a lot, but there is a lot of traffic on that road. It's not just people that live on the road, and it's not just gravel trucks. It's constant traffic. This will fix it correctly, and as I said, we can say it's been done, and you'll have a good road to travel on for a substantial amount of time with only minor maintenance in the future. Robinson Road and Pine Ledge Road were accepted by the town when the development was done. Unfortunately, as is typical back in that era, the drainage was not designed with existing and in fact future demands on that system being considered. Those folks that live on that U essentially have lived with road drainage into their basements, into their front yards for a long time. It is so flat and so ledgy that there's really not an easy way to get the drainage collected and appropriately dealt with. As we started working on this project, it became pretty clear that it was going to be necessary to collect all the drainage in a retention pond, let Mother Nature do some evaporation from that, but also in high storm times have an overflow mechanism where rainwater could in fact collect and then be discharged to a pond. So that all added to the cost of the project. It's been promised to these folks for a long, long time that live there, as well as those of us that travel through there. And it's really now time to fix the problem so they can have full enjoyment of their property without the town's water compromising that. So yes, that's up over $1 million. Again, it seems like a lot, but it's the appropriate way to fix the problem so we never have to go back there and do it again except for routine maintenance. We brought Jim Hall on board with Dubois and King because I'm an engineer, but I'm not a structural engineer. And I took Jim on kind of a field trip to go look first at Drake's Island. So Jim, if you want to talk a little bit about that bridge, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Carol. Yeah, the Drake's Island Bridge is routinely inspected by the Maine Department of Transportation. And during the last inspection, they sent a letter of deficiency to the town, stating that there were certain deficiencies in the bridge that needed to be addressed. Carol reached out, asked if we could take a closer look. On further investigation, we noticed that the timbers are in significantly poor condition, in particular the substructure, which means which are the timbers that support the bridge. The timbers that make up the pier have significant deterioration and have marine borers. In addition to the poor condition of the timber, all of the rail on the bridge and the approach rail has either failed or is in the process of failing. Given that these are life safety issues, there's something that needs to be addressed immediately. Given the challenging environment and the geometrics of the Drake's Island Bridge, we've recommended to the town that they completely replace the bridge. It provides a single point of access to Drake's Island, and the construction will be rather complex to maintain traffic. So we're recommending that they do a single, as opposed to a rehabilitation at this point. It makes the most sense for the long-term impacts to the community on Drake's Island to replace it at this point.
So while Jim was here, we also took a look at some seawalls. We started out at Casino Square. Again, I'm not a structural engineer, but I was concerned about the integrity of that seawall. We then looked at a couple of other walls, one of which is a FEMA project from a year ago in March in that storm. We have an extension to our FEMA grant to bring us through November of this year. So Jim, maybe you could talk a little bit about the seawalls and what you see there. Sure.
I guess to start with, the FEMA project is the Crescent Beach wall. There's about a 200-foot section of wall that was severely damaged in a storm event. It's currently supported by a concrete wall and steel sheet pile system. The steel sheet pile system, that's part of it, has been completely damaged, so it's no longer providing any structural capacity to the wall. This wall system, is immediately supporting Webb Hannett Road, so that section of the wall, really needs to be replaced immediately. The sub-base materials below the road at this point without a subsurface investigation, it's hard to tell exactly what's supporting the road. So we've recommended that we go in and do some soil borings to test, see exactly what's supporting the road, and immediately replace the steel sheet piles. So I guess that's the section at Crescent. I guess the other areas along Webb Hannet, needs significant repair. It looks like it's been kind of rehabilitated off and on over the years, but there's certain sections that are going to require significant concrete rehabilitation. There's large cracks and spalls, and if while we're out fixing this section that's failed, if we patch and seal and chip the sections with significant deterioration, we can extend the service life of those remaining pieces of wall. And I guess the last segment was the section at Casino Square. When we looked at the section at Casino Square, the section of Casino Square is the concrete's in poor condition as well. There's severe cracking. There's movement in the wall that's just north of the lookout. It looked like the lookout section had been rehabilitated at some point, but the concrete in that section is failing as well. So we're working currently on a cost to replace that, but right now we're looking at proposing maybe a hybrid of some of it gets rehabilitated and some of it gets replaced. But it's in very, very poor condition. If you go along the beach there, you can see the large concrete spalls. It sees heavy traffic in the summer, and it doesn't have an extended service life left in it without a significant rehabilitation or replacement.
But having said that, I want to be sure everybody understands that it's safe to travel. If they were in danger of imminent failure, we would be closing the roads or taking other protective measures. Hopefully that helps explain the projects that we're looking for the bond on. And that's just the engineering side. I think John wants to talk a little bit about the financial side of it.
So the cost of doing this work is estimated around $4.5 million. We are in the development planning phase. We have 2 engineering costs presently for the road work and drainage work. We don't have yet from Mr. Hall coming within the next few weeks cost estimates for the Drake's Island Bridge and the 3 seawalls. One of the seawalls will be reimbursed by FEMA at 75%, but we have to pay out 100% and wait for the 75 to come to us. And that will possibly include moving utility lines to the opposite side of the street on the Crescent Beach project. We went to the Board of Selectmen, and Carl Eckstead, our chair, is with us tonight. And we had a discussion with the Board of Selectmen. They asked Jody to work on the spreadsheet that we put together through their recommendations when we did the public safety complex of looking at 20 years out and taking into account the LD1, the requirement of having 60 to 90 days of operating funds, and together whether our cash would carry us into the future if we were cash flow into the future if this $4.5 million bond would take place. We then, and we'll talk briefly on that, we then went to our bond counsel and bond broker, and our bond broker has put together a plan where we would do bond anticipation notes to fund the projects, and then we right size the bond to be no more than 4.5, or if it's less, then it would be less than that. So Carl, did you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, first off, since we're talking about the overall budget, I wanted to thank the administration, all the department heads, and the budget committee for all of the work and effort put in to get us to where we are. Jody, being the keeper of the funds, has done a wonderful job with Casey Welch, her assistant. And believe me, nobody wants at this stage of the game to be talking about borrowing another $4 or $5 million. But as Carol and Jim Hall have said, these are things that are life safety. They may not be imminent dangerous right now, but this is not going away. The folks on Pine Ledge I've worked with over the last 3 years, they've been extremely patient. This is a project that needs to be done. And of course, Swamp John is something that it's no longer cut and paste and throw some coal patch on it and fix it. This is a road that's heavily traveled that needs to be fixed. So in looking at this from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, all 5 of us are totally in agreement. On numbers, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be around 1.5% interest rate. And, we, with the COVID-19 and the federal government, we only could hope that with the getting in front of this and voting this in now, that maybe, just maybe, there's a way for us to get some federal dollars coming back to us. So we're ahead of the curve by doing that. So we wholeheartedly support the 4.5 million. If it can be less, it will be. But we certainly, for a few months now, ever since the pandemic has hit, we've been asking a lot of questions, and Jody's been keeping us informed with the town manager in regards to where we stand financially. Certainly, we're all concerned about the budget. We're going to be in the black, as the town manager has said, for this year, and we will be watching probably almost on a daily basis in this next budget cycle to see where we stand, to make sure that we remain healthy and strong. Because we've been so ultra conservative over the last 20 years, probably, by putting money away for buying equipment and doing things the way we've done it. We are financially in pretty good shape versus some other communities. So kudos to Jody and her staff and all the administration working collectively together so that we can do things like put land in conservation, which has always been supported by the town. We still have the ability to do things like that and to keep the people safe. So from the board's perspective, we wholeheartedly support these projects.
Well, great. That's a great discussion on the warrant article involving the bond issue. And to wrap things up, I think John might have wanted to say a few words about the voting procedure. You already touched upon it earlier, but July 14th is the date.
Normally, we would have voted June 9th, but the governor pushed off the elections to July 14th. The Board of Selectmen moved the town meeting, the annual town meeting, to that date. And we are encouraging people to either do absentee voting or be at the polls, which is at the junior high, on the 14th from 8 to 8 p.m. And so we are, as I said earlier, mailing out our town meeting booklet the week of June 1st. And that should be in the hands of everyone by the weekend. So thank you very much.
Thank you all and stay well.